How are you tonight? Thanks for joining us. This is our Fall Farminar series. We're in number 2 of 5. Thank you for joining us. Hope you can join us each Tuesday through December 10th with a week off of Thanksgiving. This is a free service of Practical Farmers of Iowa, so we're glad to be able to provide this to you and let you share in some of this great farmer knowledge that we can bring together in our network. Before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit about what Practical Farmers of Iowa, a nonprofit organization, what brings together 2,200 people of all different kinds of enterprises, all different kinds of markets, production practices, from livestock producers to small grain farmers and large grain farmers and vegetables and fruits, and even folks from outside of Iowa. 12% of our members are not from Iowa. Here are our values that hold us all together. We really believe in, excuse me, in sharing our knowledge so we can solve on-farm challenges. We believe that we can enhance our ecosystems that are with integrated operations that are diverse and independent. Agriculture can be ecologically sustainable and built on a fair market system, a widespread ownership of land and resources, family, community, and wholesome food is celebrated. And I wanted to just make a quick thank you to Dick Thompson, who passed away. He was our co-founder. He's in the middle there with his wife Sharon and other co-founder Larry Callum. Dick passed away in August, and we're very grateful for everything he did to help get this organization started back in 1985. So why do 2,200 people join Practical Farmers of Iowa and get to network at these great events like Farminars? Well, they believe in growing more than crops. That's a tagline that our members came up with, actually. They believe in growing people, growing new ideas on their farms and diverse crop and livestock enterprises. So you'll see signs like that around Iowa more and more. This is just one example of one of our beginning farmer members, Jeff Hafner, near Panora, Iowa, in central Iowa. He converted an old CAFO building to aquaponics, and it was profiled by a youth group of kids that were learning about sustainable agriculture. We're happy to get to celebrate stories like Jeff and many others. Won't you join Practical Farmers of Iowa if you're not already a member? Just $20 for students, $50 for the whole farm. You get all sorts of really great benefits that you can check out on our website. And if you want to learn more, just check us out on Facebook. You can join us and like us on Facebook and kind of see what we're all about and before you make up your decision to become a member. I wanted to take a couple minutes to update some folks on some great events coming up. If you want to click that link on your screen, it'll take you right to our monthly calendar that we keep updated with our events and also events of our partners. You can see in the yellow box there, that's today. That's where we're at right now. We got Farminar today. We got cover crop field days tomorrow and Thursday in Iowa. Our partners, the Iowa Organic Association's got a conference coming up this weekend. And you can see stuff like this each month of the year at our website right there at practicalfarmers.org. So feel free to take a look. And in December, there's a great opportunity for people that are growing for CSA markets, community supported agriculture markets. Learn together from other farmers on how to improve your business and production methods. You can register by November 29th. That's the deadline. That's the deadline. And it's just free for Practical Farmers of Iowa members, which is a really great benefit of being a member. You get to attend many events at no cost. Another event in January, if you're looking to attend a great conference, 24th, 25th, mark your calendars. We'd love to have you attend our big event. 650 people came last year, and it's always a great opportunity to network with farmers. You can check out our brochure and lineup right there on our website. It will definitely be a very exciting event. We're so excited to have you here tonight as well, and thank you so much for joining us. Please come back every Tuesday night through December 10th. But no more from me. Let's begin with tonight's speakers. I think we'll start with Ellen from Harlan, and then we'll go to John joining us from Austin, Texas. Ellen, I'll pull up your slides. You can begin your presentation.
All right. I guess I'll start. Just a little bit about my background. I'm Ellen Walsh-Rosmann, once again, from Harlan, and I farm with my in-laws and my husband's family. We have a 700-acre certified organic, very diverse farm. And 3 years ago when I joined the farm, I started the vegetable enterprise because of the lack of local vegetables in our county, and for the people who live in rural America, which is kind of funny. That's how it works out. A lot of farmers not really growing food where we live. And just this year, I have started a certified organic egg laying operation. And for the last 2 years, I have been marketing my goods to Omaha, which is about 1 hour, exactly 1 hour from our farm. Mostly because of what my product mix is, what I like to grow, and then just the scaling up. So I'll just start a little bit about how I got here to what we're talking about today or tonight. So in 2011, I decided to start a local food sourcing business. When we got married in 2010, the fall of 2010, Daniel and I, because of what we were so passionate about, decided we wanted to have all Iowa local food meal, and I really enjoyed figuring out how much we needed to have, connecting with all the farmers. A lot of them were my friends, and I should back up too. A lot of them are my friends because I used to work at Wheatsfield Cooperative as a cheese buyer, so I have a lot of experience when it comes to wholesale, purchasing, how to deal with farmers, and pricing things appropriately. And then I also grew up in a family, my parents own a restaurant in Northeast Iowa, and I've worked several years in food service and understand integrity of food and respecting food, and I also really love to cook. So, rewind again. So when we got married, we had an all local meal, and the week before my wedding, most brides are stressing about details about things like flowers, which we did grow ourselves, but I was on the phone with the farmers just confirming that we had enough of everything, and when we were short, then I called other farmers, my Plan Bs, and picked up all the food and dropped it off at the caterer. So it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought, well, there's definitely a need for this, and I'm sure a lot more people would want local food at their wedding or event, whatever that may be. So I started this local food sourcing business, and so far I've done 2 weddings, and in the pictures here you can see a wedding that I did last year, and it happened to be in my county, which is really cool because, like I said earlier, it's a lot of people are kind of disconnected from the food they grow, and people don't grow food. They grow a lot of crops. And then the other wedding I did was this summer, and I really loved all of it, and I happened to work with the same caterer both times, and they completely understand local food, and I also help the couple do wedding or menu planning too, so we can really nail down a seasonal menu that works for when they want to get married. And this coming year, I have 2 weddings coming up, one the end of May and one in September. So I'm already sourcing food for that. And so in 2011 is when we started Pin Oak Place, and that's the vegetable and egg line of Rosmann Family Farms. And we grow things like sweet corn, garlic, kale, beets, radishes, potatoes, and we grow them in a large scale. I also had a baby in 2012, so last December. And this year, like I mentioned earlier, I had a wedding in August, and I also had about a 3-week, maybe 16 days of solid sweet corn harvest, and the wedding was kind of right in the smack middle of that. And then because of the way that I market my goods, I harvest and deliver all on the same day, and we sold a lot of sweet corn to Omaha. We grew an acre of sweet corn and got a lot of ears. I think almost 8,000 ears, if I remember right. So there was one week where, and Xavier always comes with me, that's Xavier there on the right. There was one week where I went to Omaha 3 times in 1 week, and that's great, but with he was 8 months at the time, with an 8-month-old and lots of sweet corn and traffic and all of that, I just was thinking, well, it'd be a lot easier if a truck came to my farm and delivered all these orders that I've made for me. So that's kind of where the two came together. And I created, just in the last couple weeks after my farm has kind of slowed down with the vegetables, kind of went public, if you will, with farm table delivery. And it comes from my farm table procurement business and then just the active delivering. So just a little bit about what's going on where our farm is. So our farm is where the orange arrow is. Oops. Yep, that's like where our farm is, and we're exactly 1 hour from Omaha, and that's where the red star is there. And Omaha is a metro of 1 million, so there's a lot of mouths to be fed, and we're actually on this, like in the last 3 years that I've lived here, we're on this really interesting tipping point threshold that we're getting ready to cross, where it's going to be huge and exploding with what local food becoming really hot. There's a lot of new local food restaurants and field to table restaurants that have opened up just in the last year. And the thing is a lot of the farmers live within an hour, like we do, from Omaha, but that's where their market is. So I think that this business will be really beneficial, because as a farmer, I know how time is very valuable, and having a truck or a vehicle come to your farm and picking up your vegetables for you and taking them to where the people are. And then also I just want to back up too. Since Daniel and I have been involved with the local food scene here in Southwest Iowa, we've created a food hub called Lone Tree Foods, and that Lone Tree Foods is acting as an aggregator for the last year. But it's kind of at this stagnant point right now where we're not really sure if we're actually making sales through it or what, because it's all just through email, a general email that's sent out, and then the chefs have to take the initiative to contact the farmer. And then we aren't moving as fast as we should be to feed the demand. So farm table delivery will act as a service for Lone Tree Food farmers. And then also our plan is, after we kind of get the nuts and bolts figured out of what we're doing here in our little food shed, then we hope to go to Central Iowa. Our farm sells a lot of food to Central Iowa right now with our meat business and our popcorn business. So there's we already have those relationships established. We're already going there anyways. Let's see. I think that's all. I mean, I'm just starting to figure it out, and I'm hoping to learn from John about how to do it very successfully. And my skill set really isn't in farming, but I mean, I love farming, don't get me wrong. I've always wanted to be a farmer, but I really like the nitty-gritty logistics, the marketing end of it. And I still will be a farmer, but I also want to help farmers and use my skill sets and my knowledge of retail and wholesale and working in restaurants. So I'll let John go from here, and then if anyone has any questions, I think that will follow. Oh, and then here also, this is our Facebook page. We just started like last week. So, and it's just by coincidence that John and I have very similar names. I actually found his business when I was searching on Google, and I was like, oh, well, that's funny. We have the same name. So great minds think alike, I guess.
So, can everyone hear me? I guess you can, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, my name is John Lash. I'm owner of a company in Austin called Farm to Table. We distribute locally grown farm products to commercial clients throughout Central Texas, meaning Austin and San Antonio. Sort of a little bit of background about, I guess, how I got into the business. I was, in 2008, driving down the road and heard a little piece on the radio about a business in Michigan doing something similar to this, and it just occurred to me that that made sense. So I went to the farmers market on the next Saturday, started talking to restaurants, and then sort of put a marketing plan together, and 6 months later quit my job and started this business. Very, very small at the beginning. I started out in a closed convenience store. I was looking for a place to sort of have a business and have coolers without spending any money, and it just sort of hit me that I would start finding convenience stores that were closed that had coolers, and one thing led to another, and I worked out of convenience stores for I'd say 6 months, 7 months until I got my first warehouse. So our customers include restaurants, independent grocery stores, commercial kitchens, caterers, and school districts. We deliver to about 200 schools each week. And we sell seasonally greens, root crops, fruits, vegetables, milk year-round, eggs year-round, Wagyu beef year-round, and then pasture-raised pork, lamb, and chicken. And it's been fun, I might say, and it's been a real challenge. But more to what I wanted to talk about was more give you some perspective on who you, as all potential distributors of your product, who would be your customers, and how you might go about approaching them and selling your stuff. Because in the absence of someone like myself or Ellen, it's sort of up to you. And I will add at this point, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll respond while this is going on, because rather than make this be a sort of a speech on my part, I'd like, give and take throughout it. So, who are your potential customers? I guess you could start with wholesale distributors, which might be somebody like myself, but any of the food distributors in your area. Some are less and some are more interested in handling locally grown farm products. There are certain specific problems. They're not really problems. It's just a different way of looking at things, and they're not interested often in investing in that different way. Grocery stores, I only sell to independent grocery stores, but you as farmers could sell to any grocery store. And the way it works down here is most of them you have to work through their warehouse, but they often have a direct delivery program so that farmers, if they're approved, can make deliveries to a specific store near them. We sell to restaurants. That's probably our biggest block of customers is restaurants, and then schools, which is growing and continues to grow. And it's a challenging part of our business, but pretty rewarding, very rewarding actually. And next, I'd like to talk about when you're selling into the wholesale market, what skills besides being a farmer and growing good things do you have to consider? And this is not, again, this is just my perspective. This is not a Bible or the word on anything, but this is just from my experience. And so when I look at the critical skills, I start with the growing practices of the farmer. Do they grow organically, or do they grow sustainably without any chemicals? Just sort of, or are they pure conventional? So that's the three sort of areas the three groups that I have: organic, sustainable, and conventional. The second critical skill, I think, is how a farmer grades his or her product. I'll pick a couple of items here. Tomatoes. Restaurants especially, and actually most customers want a consistently sized tomato. So the farmers that I work with grade their tomatoes they're pretty strict about grading them, and they're not categorized like you hear in the food business, 5x6 or 6x6. I really, quite frankly, don't even really know what that is. But grading means in a box of tomatoes they're consistently sized. And what happens to the others? Well, I, for example, might buy the smaller ones or the ones that are the right size but not pretty. I may buy those for a lesser price and then sell them to restaurants or customers who might make sauces out of them or salsas or something like that. They don't really need to have a nice tomato for that. And so that the same goes for vegetables, squash, zucchini. It's really important that you take a real critical look at what goes in the box to make sure that it's pretty and it's consistent. And then the next consideration is handling. In other words, if you're going to deliver the product, how it's packaged and how you deliver it. Packaging becomes very important the more up the food chain of being a commercial customer somebody is. It could be, for example, some restaurants don't care that much, but if it's a restaurant like a national chain or white tablecloth, they really are strict about how their stuff comes in and what it looks like and the condition of delivery. That what they don't like to see is they don't like to see their cases of tomatoes sitting in the back of a pickup truck with the remnants of compost or something there, and non-refrigeration. So it's but I'll tell you, when my experience and the experiences in talking to other farmers is, if you can do well or master these skills, then you'll get a really good reputation out there, and you'll be a brand. And there's a number of farms in the Austin area that are brands. And once that happens, that your potential customers really won't question your products too much. It'll be more like, well, I want to get A, B, C, and D, but what else do you have? Because I know you do good stuff, so just bring, give me 5 other things and bring them along. And so it's really, you've kind of made it, you made it easier to sell your stuff by approaching the market in this way. And back to what we sell, I forgot to mention that the geographic area that I work with in terms of growers and farmers is approximately 120-mile radius of Austin. And for me, that means that when the crops end in the Austin area, their winter crops are just beginning around San Antonio, which is the farms down there are about 110 miles away. So tonight we're going to have a freeze, and tomorrow we're going to have a freeze, which means pretty much everything in the hill country around Austin is going to go away. And I'll then sort of transfer my buying to the areas around San Antonio. So what advantages we have in Texas, and I do in Austin particularly, is availability of crops 12 months out of the year. And it's let me respond to this. I'm going to respond to this. About the question was, are you providing the products with specs the customers are requesting regarding size or other quality aspects? Sort of. The reason I say sort of is that there are standard boxes, and they're standard boxes. I don't set the most of these specs are set by the big grocery chains. And zucchini can't be any longer than X. I don't know. I think it might be 8 inches, and it can't be any further around than Y. And anything outside smaller or larger is considered not number one quality. Cucumbers have to be straight. They can't curl, and they can't be disfigured. But I'm not myself. I'm not as particular about those things because I'm not selling much into the retail market. It's more restaurants, people that are using it, cooking it with it right away, and not necessarily selling it in stores. Although I do have customers, and I do have to pay attention, and I do have to make sure that they get those things in a way that is presentable. So in my warehouse, I basically have zucchini that I call is number 2, and zucchini that's number 1. So when the retail stores want zucchini, they get number 1, and everyone else gets number 2. So and a lot of this for me, just to keep talking about specs and quality, a lot of this for me is I didn't really know much when I was starting out, and wouldn't have known a number 2 from a number 1, really. It was sort of like really working at learning, listening to my customers, and listening and spending a lot of time with farmers. I mean, for the first 2.5 or 3 years, I did almost all farm pickups, which meant that I spent a lot of time on the road and a lot of time BSing with farmers. I mean, the few people that work for me were pretty frustrated because I'd leave at noon thinking, and they'd think I'd be back by 5, and I'd get back at 10, and it's like, what happened, John? I said, well, I just started talking, and other farmers showed up, and next thing you know, it was 2 hours later, and we had sort of gossiped and caught up, and I learned a whole lot about what they do, and was able to communicate some of what I needed from them, and it was a real good networking opportunity, and it's really helped me in my business. So I lost my chain of thought there on the specs, but I hope that answered the question on specs. I don't set them, and I haven't refused many items that have come in, but I have tried to educate farmers who they're prone to think that whatever they sell at a farmer's market and that everyone at the farmer's market buys is what is appropriate and acceptable in the commercial market, and it isn't the same at all. So I remember a farmer calling me saying they had some 8-ball squash and had a lot of it and would like to sell it and were willing to discount it, even though their initial price was, well, $4 a pound, and they discounted it to really 100% more than I would normally pay for the product. But I said, what the heck? And when they showed up, the 8-ball, which is, I don't know if anyone there is familiar with it, but it's the size of a pool ball. It's 3 inches round. But what the farmer brought me was basically softball or larger size, and I tried to explain to him. I said, "This, I'll buy it. I'll give you the money, but I can't sell it because none of my customers would take it. It's really really an unacceptable product." But they sort of learned, and I still work with them, and they've learned that what they can sell in one venue is not going to work in the commercial venue. Anyway, so that's what's important about the skills in the wholesale market. Besides, of course, you're farmers to begin with, so you've got most of this stuff down. But as you hone it, it becomes what people really covet in the restaurant and even in grocery stores. That's really what they want. So in my outline, I say market price, and really the market price in Texas is for the most part determined by what HEB, a very large regional grocery chain who purchases quite a bit of Texas stuff, what they're willing to pay. So if I'm talking to a farmer about, I'd like a box of zucchini or boxes of zucchini, and how much is it? The response is usually whatever HEB pays. And so I often don't really have to talk price too much, although I do, and I don't, quote unquote, negotiate too much. If there's a price sort of differential between me and the farmer, it's usually not much, and I usually try to go with the farmer on what he or she wants. And I probably didn't finish my discussion about the area that we purchase out of, which is that 125-mile area, and which is why I'm so lucky to have product year-round. Because, for example, spinach is starting next Monday, and I've sort of gotten restaurants in Austin, San Antonio so sort of interested in it that I don't buy package. I buy packages, 5-pound packages, and last year we sold 25,000 pounds of spinach, which when I started this thinking about 25,000 pounds, it's just like I couldn't even imagine it. But that's sort of how this business has evolved. And again, I started out small. I didn't borrow any money. I spent my, I guess you could say, my savings and my retirement, and anything I bought out of the money that, for the first year or so, I was putting money into the business a little at a time just to keep things going. But after about a year, sales were enough that I could take the money and expand, buy more product, and then eventually a truck, and move into a warehouse.
Could you talk a little
with
bit
a
about
cooler,
the size of your
and another
fleet?
truck,
like,
and
how big was your
employees,
fleet your
and
first year?
It happened.
How many farmers did you
use this term tritely, but it happened sort of organically, meaning, I mean, I was wanted it to work, but I wasn't going to go out and go into debt to make it happen, and I didn't go into debt. And now we have, yes, yes. It was a suburban. It was a suburban. Yes, a suburban. Suburban with a rear air conditioner, and in the middle of summer, I had a thermometer in it. It would stay at 60 degrees, which in Texas is really important. So the Suburban was there for a year, and then I bought a used refrigerated truck after a year. 14-foot UD, and it's UD 1200. It's sort of important when you're looking at equipment to try to have something that's dock high so that you can load product onto your truck easily and then unload it easily, meaning the handling part of what you're doing really sort of goes away. Although in restaurant, I guess you don't really need it, because I don't know that many restaurants have a dock that you would be unloading to, nor enough stuff that would make a dock important. That's a good question. I probably started out with 8 or 10 or 12, and I started out, rather than what I did my first year was, I was, like you described, an aggregator. I would get orders from customers, then I would contact the farmers, and over a period of 2 or 3 days, I'd either go there to get the stuff, or they would bring it to me, and then I would distribute it or send it to the customers. And that evolved into getting in front of that, the needs of the customers, and buying ahead of, and buying and inventorying what I grew to learn they wanted, the restaurants or my customers wanted. So initially it was 10 or 12 farmers and then some meat purveyors, and now it's, I'd say, 100 or so farmers, and then the protein and other, probably 10 or 12 or 15 suppliers of the various protein, plus a dairy farmer and I wouldn't call him an egg farmer, but an egg person. So, our biggest, our biggest, by volume, our biggest products are tomatoes, eggs, and year-round tomatoes, eggs, and spinach. Those are our biggest items year-round. Does that? Hopefully that answers your question. I mean, I started it very sort of in a very conservative way, just so that I didn't have to worry about too much, and I didn't brag about it. I didn't talk to newspapers or anyone about what I was doing, because my attitude was I'd rather really get the business and grow it to the point where it really was a real business, rather than just talk about what it was I wanted to do. I just wanted to go ahead and do it, and then talk about it later, if that makes sense. And then you should ask questions as I go along. And then when you as a farmer are considering what to sell to the wholesale
like a price list and availability market, and say, okay, this is happening. Are you in? Or
I guess you have to start by making sure you have a customer, and then concentrate on products you grow well, and that customers generally would buy. Yes, and really the way I started marketing was simply, in the very early days, it was simply taking a little brown paper bag with 2 tomatoes and 2 peaches into a restaurant with my card in it and a little bit of background, no fancy brochures, and I mean nothing fancy about it, and And so I was selling my service on the quality of what we had, and so I felt like the best thing would be to just simply let them taste tomatoes, let them taste peaches, and wait for them to call me back. And there were times when I wasn't even back in my car that they were calling me on my cell phone, wanting to know when they could get the tomatoes and get the peaches. They were really excited. It was really pretty. It was really pretty neat, and that's why I mentioned to you in starting this that I think.
So I didn't know if was the culture already
a lot of
established in Austin. I'm sure it was in San Antonio with the restaurants, because one thing
farming,
I feel like I might butt up against is these chefs and these
the
farmers
farms
already
in that
have
area. I would just think
so they kind of don't know where I fit into it. But
I
see myself as, well, I'm helping the farmer, and I'm delivering it for them, and maybe the farmers will say, well, I want to have that relationship with them too. So how do you get around those things, and do you think that should be a concern, or?
Well, the way, I guess and it's a philosophy rather than, I mean, it's a way that I've sort of settled on, this is how I'm going to do it. And that is that if a restaurant had a relationship with a farmer, then they had a relationship with the farmer, and, good for them, go for it. I don't want to get involved in selling them anything that they're getting directly from a farmer. But on the other hand, if you want other stuff that you're not getting, because of the fact that I'm working with so many farmers in different parts of the state, there are things that I have that these farmers would never have, really. So I could fit in that. I would fill in between the cracks. If this restaurant was really committed to buying as much local as possible, I'd be the guy that would have basil in the middle of winter, because I could get hydroponic basil and the farmers couldn't have it. Or I could get them tomatoes because I get greenhouse tomatoes from Marfa, and the farmers wouldn't have tomatoes. So I would I'd either sell restaurants directly because they wanted me to, but I'll address the other part about the farmers. A lot of the farmers, there are some farmers who continue to prefer to work directly with restaurants and not me, and that's fine. And but there are other farmers who have come to the conclusion that their time is better spent on the farm and not trying to sell product directly to customers. I'll give you a case in point. When Austin Independent School District was wanting to start their farm to school program, I was in business, had been in business for about 6 months, and they put out a request for proposal to all the farmers who were at the farmers market. They got the list from the people that manage the farmers market, and not a farmer responded. And so they contacted me, and I was like, well, why? I called a couple of farmers, and I said, well, I'm thinking about submitting a proposal. Why didn't you? And they're like, well, John, I don't want to drive from 70 miles away to deliver 10 pounds of zucchini or 6 bunches of kale or whatever. I mean, it just wasn't worth it. They weren't a distribution. They didn't have a distribution infrastructure, and they just weren't interested in doing it. So I mean, that's sort of how that happens. But the farmers I work with love.
And you're paying. Yeah.
Working with me.
When you go to a farm, more about the distribution.
They
and you go
respect
to a farm
the way I do
and
things, and they really appreciate
on Monday or
getting paid for their product without a lot of
kale,
argument or discussion,
3 cases
and
of
getting
tomatoes.
paid for it.
And then
second
do you,
it comes
at
to
that
me.
moment,
they really like
when
that.
you go to the farm, do you take it back to your warehouse, or did you?
What
did you do in the lighter days or the earlier days when you?
Earlier days, good question.
So would they have the
I'd
orders
get it at
already,
the
like,
farmer's
broken
market,
up
and
and
that's
stuff
when I
for
was
you?
working till 7 or 8 at night, because I get it at the farmer's market, and that which started at 3 o'clock, but the farmers would get there at 2, and I'd get it and go deliver it. So that meant really, I occasionally the farmers would deliver to me at my little convenience store when they came into town for the farmers markets. Yes, yeah, I'd show up in my Suburban, and they'd come out and throw the stuff in the back. I'd give them a check, and I'd leave. But I'd say that right now I have just 2 pickups at the farmers markets now, both on a Saturday, and both because both of those farmers deliver to me once per week already. And it could be that I need more stuff, so I go to the farmer's market to get it on Saturday morning, but those farmers are ready to come directly to me. You know, a number of farmers are involved in, CSAs, and farmers market. So they have to come to Austin for purposes of CSA and farmers market, so that brings them to town, many farmers, once or twice a week. So I have the ability to get deliveries from these farmers once or twice a week. And then I go out in the summer. I have a route that goes out into the hill country. For those in Iowa where there's not a lot of hills, may not understand that, but anyway, it's a higher altitude west of Austin, and we have a route. We go there twice a week to pick up from 5 or 6 farms, and they're the important farms because 2 of them produce tomatoes for us, or grow tomatoes for us, and we have some big tomato customers. A local burger chain that's has 8 locations now. They had, or 9 locations. They had 1 when I started with them, and then a taco chain with 5 locations, and then a 24-hour restaurant with 5 locations. So between the 3 of them and a few others, we go through a lot of tomatoes, and can never not have tomatoes. As in, the second I don't have tomatoes for the Burger King, the burger chain, is the day that they find a different supplier for tomatoes. So, yeah. So we do that route in the summer, in spring, summer, into fall, and then it changes into, we do a route into around San Antonio in the late fall, winter, and into spring. And what that means is, for the local products, there are things that I get that other farmers or others who might be selling to my customers don't have, because they don't have access to these products, because I go out and I get them, and they don't. And so, I was looking at the map. I don't know if there's much geographic or temperature variables within 100 miles of you, but that's why it works so well in Texas, or at least where I am in Texas, for that stuff. And
a question here that
again, started out
from
10 or 12 farms. Now it's about 100, and we're not working with 100 at a time, but it's more like,
originally we thought that
this time of the year we're working with these 20 farms, and then this time of the year we're working with these 20, and then and so on and so forth, and then there's a handful that will have stuff year round.
So I'm kind of held liable with integrity, and yeah, that's kind of my concern.
Well, the other part of that, and handling, the question here is about handling payment, but there's other issues involved, and that is, in terms of handling payment, I write a check on the spot for every order. Occasionally, farmers might make a drop off, and they're too busy to even wait for a check, and I'll mail them one. But of I would say it's just a handful of times that we don't write a check immediately. And then to your question, but just to elaborate one step further on that, if I go to a restaurant and I bring a product, the restaurant or the customer looks to me to back up the product. If it's not up to snuff, I can't use the excuse, well, Farmer Brown did this. Their response to me is, no, John, you did this. You brought the stuff, and you're assuming that we'll want it when we don't. And so it's really your name, my name, that's involved in making sure that it's good, because customers are not interested in, they don't want to hear the story about anything. They just want to have it good, and they're not interested in any of the rest of it.
Are you emailing the chefs and the
I remember trying to
calling
explain, sort of
the
story behind the story of the stuff, and I mean, the restaurants just tune me out, and they're off somewhere else. I mean, I can talk, and I think they're listening, but they're not. They don't even really care. They don't even really care to know the other parts of the story. We send out an email Sunday night and either Thursday or Friday. The Sunday night email is more comprehensive. It sort of addresses everything that we have currently in stock. And it also addresses what's coming, what's going, the state of the state, as it were. And I may talk a little bit about some of the problems farmers are having and this and that, so that the restaurants or the customers have some context about, why I'm having trouble with tomatoes, or why I'm having trouble with peaches, or, why this is happening or that is happening. All of a sudden, with a little bit of background about what was going on out there, they go, okay, I get it. I understand now why these things are happening. Before I started, I mean, I had a lot of questions from really, that really floored me. I mean, restaurants asking for stuff that, probably didn't grow any further north than Costa Rica or something like that, but that doesn't happen anymore. So I do a comprehensive email on Sunday night, and I do one on Thursday or Friday that basically just, what's changed from Sunday to Thursday or Friday, and it's really short, maybe they're both really just emails, and the second one is very small, and usually it deals with 5 or 6 or 7 items, and the first one is more comprehensive. And I've avoided putting in photos and making it fancy like my website, because I wanted to make it easy and accessible, and I could do it from wherever I am.
On your orders, do you say
wherever I am and whenever I want?
Like how much is available? Do you ever? And if so, do you ever find yourself overselling an item?
And so what they do is they respond
in
several ways. They respond via email, by text message, or by our cell phone or our phone. So we get orders in 3 ways. Yes. Well, we did it this morning. We delivered to schools today. I didn't have very much zucchini, but the person who came in early and delivered to a customer who buys lots of zucchini sold it all. And then all of a sudden, the whole crew came in about 45 minutes later and discovered, and it was like, oh my God.
The chefs that I deal with,
and all the schools want zucchini. So I called a farmer who's not far from me that I get stuff from.
Or made up for the week, and
35 miles away, and that was at 7:30, and
tomatoes, or those all blue
I guess 10:45 they had dropped off, another 25 boxes or something like that, so we could finish our orders. But it doesn't always end that nicely, It often. Yeah, well, Yes, and I've been yelled at. And I don't like to get yelled at, but I've been, if you've seen these chef shows when the chefs kind of go postal, I mean, I've been on the other end of that a couple of times, and it's really not very much fun. But I'll tell you, to everyone that's listening, all you really have to do, and I've learned this, I guess, the hard way, is just tell them what's going on. As long as you don't surprise them, they're okay with it. If they're expecting something for a special on Wednesday, and on Monday or Tuesday you're not going to have it, then you simply tell them that, and they'll go, okay, thanks, I'll do something else. But if you show up on Wednesday and you don't have it, then they go postal, and you could understand why. So if you just, one of the things that chefs told me when I was doing the research to start the business, they would say, listen, John, one of the things we don't like is surprises. Just don't surprise us. If you tell us what's going on, and especially because you're working with farmers and there are so many extenuating circumstances, we'll understand it, and that'll be that. Just let us know. So that's how I deal with that. Jordan asked me if we're doing aggregation like I did in the first year. Yes. For example, to fill the squash orders today, I needed squash that I had from 4 farms. But when it comes to tomatoes, because we're selling so many of them, it's sort of evolved into the where I work with 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 farms for tomatoes, because I need a lot of tomatoes, and it's critical that I have them. So I have to have a commitment from farmers, or the other side of it is they have to have a commitment from me, because it works both ways. If I say I need X amount of tomatoes per week, then I better be buying X amount of tomatoes per week, because if I don't, then that farmer's got to find something to do with those tomatoes he or she didn't sell to me. So I'm still aggregating, but I'm more and more sort of specializing in certain items that have become really critical, like tomatoes, because when I was before the Suburban, I was selling stuff out of the back of my Volvo, and if I was selling 3 boxes of tomatoes, I thought that was the end of the world. But I mean, now we're selling probably about 15,000 pounds of tomatoes a week now, and I actually have to pinch myself when I do that. Angela asked me if I've seen farmers reducing the variety of crops they raise, and that's an interesting question. And in some cases, yes. In some cases, no, because not all, but a large amount of farmers that I work with sell the farmers market, and as a result of that, they have to have a pretty broad variety of products. And if they're selling CSAs, they also have a broad variety of products. So for those farmers, yeah, I mean, I could look at my QuickBooks, and the farm that I do the most business with, I would think that the items that I bought from her is probably, right now, I bet it's 60 different items, and she's a pure vegetable farmer. That's what she does. And there are other farmers who are, I wouldn't say so much specializing as realizing that they didn't have good luck doing X, Y, and Z, and so they're going to concentrate. I have one set of farmers who, they're old, they're a couple, have a nice farm, raise organic, and they've just decided they're going to only grow stuff that they can drop and doesn't bruise. And so they, over the years, have tried a lot of different things, but have really narrowed it down to potatoes, butternut squash, eggplant, green peppers. Let's see what else. and basil. They sell a lot of basil to Whole Foods. I'm sure you've heard of them. So they sell basil to Whole Foods, but his kind of off the cup philosophy is if I drop it and I can't pack it, I don't want to grow it. And then I have other farmers who've tried a lot of different things that have never really had the sort of luck that they seem to have with zucchini and yellow squash, jalapenos and tomatoes, and that's it. That's the extent of what he'll grow. And now, as we know, there's a farm bill about to be enacted, and the farmers I talk to are pretty worried about whether they'll even be farmers in the future because of the what they're seeing coming up before too long. Anyway, see if there's anything else I have in my presentation that I really have to talk about so that well, in terms of I'm not going to really try to preach about what to try to sell the wholesale market, but really at the end of the day, you really need to be growing stuff that there's a market for.
Do the farmers
and it may be a market already, or it may be that you talk to a restaurant about growing, you know, A, B, and C, and they're like, okay, and with the idea that there are other restaurants who might want to buy that as well. Yes. No, yeah, absolutely. But I do that, but farmers are very reluctant to do that. They're very reluctant to. The way I would put it is, a couple farmers have taken what I've said and they've gone with it 100%, and others have found lots of reasons to not go forward with it. And you know, I think at the end of the day, they may have been burned in the past by somebody saying to do something and then not doing it. I know that when I was starting the business, many farmers were gun shy because they're like, well, HEB, which is that grocery chain, said if you will grow as much zucchini as you can grow, we'll buy. So they'd go out and plant 15 or 20 acres of zucchini and make one delivery to them, and then all of a sudden they never get a call back, and HEB doesn't want it anymore, and they've got 15 or 20 acres of zucchini that they have to plow under because they can't afford to continue to pour money into it without a place to sell it. And that I would hear stories like that once a day. But right now I've got farmers growing specialized peppers, mainly those kinds of things, peppers and potatoes, hot peppers. I have a farmer who grows jalapenos for that taco chain. They do a roasted jalapeno sauce, which is basically their signature sauce, and this farmer is growing jalapenos, and for them, and I would say of the jalapenos he grows, 99% of them he sells to this chain. So that's one. And you know, he used to grow a few jalapenos, not very many, and I got some and took them to the restaurant, and they said, these are great. Could we get more, or next year would they grow for us? And I asked him, and he said, love to, and he did. And we've been doing that for 4 years. So I try to. The problem, though, is I've really had trouble getting farmers to agree to do something based on a suggestion that I had, and it's for probably good reason. They've been burned or not.
Becoming a LLC right now, and then this Lone Tree Foods, that food hub I was mentioning,
by someone, and they're just paranoid about
with all the other farmers that there's a person that kind of helps aggregate that.
FTD will be LLC, and
that we are also in the process of becoming an LLC.
Oh,
the local
Farm to Table
RC&D
is a
kind of
LLC,
been facilitating it,
and
we've been calling ourselves a network right now. So, but then Jan had a question about food safety issues, and if you want to go ahead and answer that, because these are things that I'm trying to think about too, and I haven't crossed that bridge yet because I've yet to make a sale. So.
Yes, I see that. Yes.
So are they?
Well,
Are they communicating with HEB and
for
saying,
me, a
or
lot,
are you doing it?
not a
Saying,
lot
yes,
of
this
many
farm
of the
does
farmers I
have
work
a food
with
safety plan, or
work
they
with
have gone through
HEB,
GAP
so they
training
have
or
certain
so you're the one.
standards that they
You're the
have
one that's saying that,
to
and then the farmers
follow,
are also saying
and I
that, or providing that
basically,
material for them.
ride on
Or
their
you have it on.
coattails, as it were. So, I don't. Yes, the answer is yes and yes. Be, yes, yeah, and there are other farmers who may not have gone through that training or comply with GAP, but they well, and now I'm thinking about the farmers I work with. The majority of them are going to be in that category. The great majority of them are in that category, um, and they all do to some extent or another. They sell commercially to
Are you talking about
grocery
FSMA, which
stores, but
actually is separate
they
from
may
the
not
Farm
like
Bill?
it, and they may not sell a lot, but they understand how it works and understand what's expected.
Which
So
which
that's
the whole
how I'm
FSMA
dealing
thing
with it,
could
but I
drive me
think it's
more
going to
into
become a
that,
lot more,
could be pretty detrimental
it's going to
to
be a bigger issue
someone
going
like you and
forward
me
with
to
the new farm
facilitate
bill. I
the
mean,
whole
at
food hub
least
and the aggregating.
what I've been told about,
So we'll have to just
yeah, yes, yes. What have you found the most, go ahead, go ahead. Well, a lot of it is what the farmers will have to, how the farmers will have to comply. For me, for my end of it, while it's going to be more work and all the rest, is going to be simple because I have control over it. But what I don't have control over is what farmers will be doing, and like the guy I do the tomatoes with, you just say, hey, listen, John, if I sell the product off of my dock here to
I'll answer.
people driving
Yeah,
by,
I'll
I
answer
won't have
Lou's
to
question
comply
because I have thought about this.
with those rules.
I don't want
But
to
if I
be a
sell to you,
Cisco
I will.
or that
So
kind of
maybe I
thing.
won't sell to
I
you
want
anymore.
to.
And I'm like, oh, that's
I want
not
to know the
good. But he
farmers I'm
goes,
working with.
you got to do what you got to do. So that's how
I also
people
see
are
that
sort of
that I
thinking
would be
about it.
different because I would be
All of a sudden,
focusing
I'm
on
getting
small farms
sort of
and
paranoid about it
sustainable
myself.
operations.
Luke has that.
Not just
Go ahead.
anyone can come in or be participating in the distribution. So that's kind of my niche and the way that I market myself.
And for me, it's yeah, it's just sort of taking care of itself. In the early days, chefs who may only have off Saturday morning saw me as a savior because I could get to them what they wanted without them having to go to the farmers market. They could spend time with their kids on a Saturday on a Saturday morning rather than going to the farmers market. And also, there are customers who are like, they know what I carry. they go out with me to the farms to visit the farmers so they know where the stuff is coming from, and it's not possible to get the products that I carry from any food distributor, large or small, that I know of in Texas. Some of them might have, where I buy tomatoes, somebody else sells a pretty large food service distributor, maybe 20 flats of grape tomatoes. So they can now say, we also have locally grown farm products, and 20 flats of grape tomatoes to a multi-million-dollar business. I mean, it's just nothing. They do it so they can say it, but they don't really have much connection to the food. For my customers, with what I do, they see this connection between their business and the food itself through me, because they understand my ethics. They know who I work with, and they really, that's the difference. That's why they work with someone like me. Does that make sense? Okay. And many of the large food distributors don't have a good reputation, but that's what's out there. I mean, if you want X and it's out of season, then you're not going to get it from me. You'll have to get it from a large food distributor. And their pricing is much more aggressive, I might say, too. Do you have a minimum revenue per mile goals for making runs to farms for product? That's a really good question. The answer is I've never really analyzed it like that. Because, for example, I try to maximize my trips. I try to couple trips out to the hill country with deliveries to restaurants. I've tried to build customers between here and Fredericksburg, which is west of Austin, where we go, so I could, along the way, generate revenue for the trip out there, and then bring product back with us. I'm just sort of a sap for this stuff. I mean, there's been a Saturdays during berry season when I come in at 7 o'clock and they say, John, we've run out of blackberries, and I'm like, oh no, well, how many do we need? And they're like X, and I know the day the farmer's picking blackberries, and I know that he picks blackberries on Saturday, so I'll call him up and say I need 30 flats of blackberries to get through to Monday, and I'll get in the car and drive, 240 miles round trip and be back by 12 or 1 and deliver the blackberries. And so I'd like to think that I'm more business-like than that most of the time, but I've been accused of being too much of an enabler about getting stuff for customers, or going to farms and getting stuff that farmers want to sell. I mean, because part of it is, I see it is very enabler. I see it as a partnership. In other words, I'm buying stuff from a farmer right now that I don't need really, and it's not good for me because they're tomatoes that are it's the end of the tomato season, and she's got fall tomatoes, and they're really just barely pink. But it's like, if she doesn't sell them to me, she doesn't sell them because she doesn't have enough to do anything with them. So I'll buy her tomatoes, but when it comes to be other times of the year, I'll be able to. I'll be her only. She won't sell strawberries to anyone but me. So that's the kind of relationships I've developed by, someone calling and say, I need to get rid of 15 cases of tomatoes. Would you buy them? And I'll go down and buy them, and I'll hold them in my tomato cooler for as long as it takes to get them red, and then I'll sell them. But farmers appreciate that sort of give and take. How do you determine your markup? You know, in the early days, because I had no experience in food service or food distribution, I just, I just, I thought to myself that I wanted to maintain a margin of 30%, and to maintain a margin of 30%, roughly speaking, you have to have a markup of around 60%. That's not, the math isn't, that doesn't work math-wise, but it's close enough that if you mark things up 60%, you'll come out at the other end with a margin of around 30% usually. And so I just got into that habit, and I try to start at that amount, but it's not practical for certain products, and so that I can have the margin at the other end. So that means some products I mark up maybe 10%, 10 or 15%. Like a lot of the meat that I sell is frozen, and so I have very little waste, and I don't have to worry about. I'd like to mark it up more, but I don't, because if I did, I wouldn't sell as much. Then eggs, markup there is probably 10%, but we sell a lot of them, and they never go bad because they never stick around long enough to go bad. The only way I lose on eggs is if my delivery driver drops cases of eggs, and then, having a small markup sort of hurts you, because if I drop a case of eggs, it's going to take me selling 15 cases of eggs to make up for that one case of eggs that was dropped. Anyway. But back to what I'm doing, and with the idea of what could be done in Iowa. I just, talking to Ellen some time ago, I just said, there's this, it's just going to be a great opportunity. If I was younger, had more energy, I'd be all over the place doing this. I've had lots of people pressuring me to expand to Dallas and Houston, but I don't know. I guess I'm too old for it. But the other thing that we have in Texas that you don't have in Iowa or other parts of the Midwest is a 12-month growing season. But I will say that the company that I heard an article about in the newspaper is still doing well. They're in Traverse City, Michigan, and deliver to about half the state. Michigan doesn't have 12-month growing season, but they've kind of evolved into selling stuff, especially to schools during the winter, that are value-added products, and they store apples, and so they have apple deliveries throughout the winter. The same could work in Iowa. So, yeah, ask me anything. I mean, it's a really exciting. This is exciting business to be in. I sometimes in the early days, I had to remind myself that it was a business because it was so much fun. I mean, I went from working in the office for 18 years to, driving around from farm to farm, and the sun went down in the middle of summer, and thinking, does it get any better? There it is, Cherry Capital Foods, yeah. In fact, we're doing a presentation together on farm to schools that's going to be in Austin in April. So, what varieties of meat? Wagyu beef, and then pasture-raised pork, lamb, chicken, and a little bit of goat and rabbits. Rabbits, who would have thought? In fact, rabbits, when I can get them, I can't get enough of them. And that was another one of those things when I started, I just never understood, but, I mean, I literally can't get enough rabbits. And beef has worked well. There's a couple of chains that buy bulk pieces that they grind into burgers, and they do quite a bit of burgers. So, but this all didn't happen overnight. I mean, it was a lot of 6 in the morning to 11 at night days. You know, I've even been known to drink Red Bull from time to time because I only need to take a sip or two of it to keep me awake. But it's been hard, and for farmers though, I mean,
I have a question for you, John. I'm not sure if you
opportunities are really
when you first started, you made the
because in
relationship
Austin,
by
for
going to
example,
the farmers
there's probably,
markets
I'd
and
say,
saying, "Hey, can I help you?"
5 or 6 farms in Austin that
get your food
deliver
to the restaurants and stuff.
on a regular basis. I mean, they're at restaurants.
But I'm just wondering.
Pretty much every day of the week.
I'm in an interesting position because I'm also a farmer, and so I don't want people to think that I'm.
Yes.
I don't know how to describe it, but I mean, yes, this solution came from a problem that I had, but and it will help my operation. But at the same time, I don't want to just be marketing my farm's goods. So I want to make sure I include all these other farms. Did you go to them, or did they come to you a lot of the time?
What happened was, I'm going to answer 3 questions real quick. The pounds for rabbits, roughly 3 pounds, about the size of a chicken that you would use in a restaurant for, split chicken dish. Goat is getting more and more popular. I'll sell 2 or 3 whole goat a week. That's the only way I can get them. And type of cut packaged product interest. Well, all of the beef, for example, and pork they're all primal cuts. In other words, I don't sell an individual ribeye or individual New York steak. I sell the whole piece of each. And pork though is very expensive down here. But again, it's the whole primal cut and not individual pieces. And then back to Ellen's initial question, the best way to answer that is to say that I talked to a lot of farmers at the farmers markets when I was doing my research and sort of setting up my business. And in the first year or 2, I'd say of all the farmers that I talked to, I only worked with only 1 or 2 of them. When push came to shove, only 1 or 2 of them were willing to work with me. So, I mean, I really sort of cast a much wider net than that because the farmers at the farmers market, the pecking order is CSA, farmers market, and then wholesale. And if usually they don't have anything left at the wholesale point, and they'd rather sell it for however much more they can sell it for through their CSA or at the farmers market. So I started nosing around and finding other farmers, and then if I was working with a farmer, they might either say, you need to talk to so-and-so, or here's so-and-so's name, go talk to them. And then what happened was, so-and-so would talk to so-and-so who talked to so-and-so, and all of a sudden, I'd be kind of getting into the real farmer sort of subculture and, networking with all of the farmers. And funny thing is, I mean, there'll be times when there'll be 5 or 6 farmers at my warehouse, and all of a sudden there'll be like this little, I don't know, kind of a little mini convention. And they also use me as sort of I wouldn't call the gossip guy, but I mean, a lot of information passes through me from this farmer to that farmer. So, I might say I saw so. Well, you know, all those yarns and all the rest. So, but a lot of how the relationships developed were because of working with this farmer who has a good reputation. Other farmers had asked me who I work with, and I'd tell them, and they'd call that farmer, and he or she would say he's great, and that would be that. Then I'd just start, working with the other farmers because I got this sort of thumbs up from the farmers that I was working with. So, and one of the things I never try to. Every relationship is important. So either with the customers being the restaurants or the farmers, it's really important to treat everyone ethically and fair and honestly, and not try to screw anyone over or pull the wool over anyone's eyes or anything like that. And if you do that, then generally you're going to be treated the same way, and everyone will, it'll be a much less stressful working relationship and a lot more fun. So, well, have your farmers ever suffered a crop loss that wasn't insured? Yes. My apple farmer lost every peach in the hill country, i.e. west of Austin this year, was lost again. All the peaches were lost. The guy who grows my tomatoes lost his zucchini to a hailstorm. At the same hailstorm, another guy who grows lots of zucchini, his zucchini was just ruined because of the wind that happened around that hailstorm. Yes, lots of yes. Unfortunately, it's sad. Yeah, there are lots of. I had a farmer who decided to go long on tomatoes, and I think she put in 30,000 plants, and it was a year that the spring was windy and the temperatures were all over the place. We had 100 degrees in March, and we had freezes in April, and just all over the place. And she didn't get a crop out of those tomatoes. So if the farmers here who know what a tomato plant costs, because they buy their seeds and get them germinated in the valley and then bring them back and plant them. I think I figured just on tomatoes that year she lost.
Do you require your farm to have
I don't know, $125,000, and it wasn't insured. Some of the farmers may have insurance, but most of them don't have insurance. So everybody's. I have liability insurance. Yeah, I have liability insurance, and I had to sort of. The farmers don't need it as much as I need it, but many of the farmers have it through farmers markets, because really, if there's an issue with a product, they're not going to be going after the farmer. They're going to be going after me. So I have what started out to be sort of a typical liability policy, and then when I started learning more about the business, then I went into it and had them amend certain parts of the policy, because there's a standard policy that deals with products and food stuff, right. And I just had them sort of modify.
Luke had a question too.
The liability policy so that it was more.
What would you say that your farmers
relevant for what I did?
Percentage
so
do you think they have? That's
liability, and then of course.
It's probably hard for you to do a lot of that. But maybe.
From vehicles and all products, not products, but assets and all those kinds of things. Let's see if there are any more questions here. Well, it's hard to say because I would say that some of them could be as much as 50%.
Right, they're putting you into their business
and it's evolved into that.
Market. They know that you're there.
I guess a better way to say that is,
afraid to take that risk to grow those unusual.
For many farmers, I've become a significant part of what they do every year. Meaning, without the business they get from me, they wouldn't be. I mean, it's really important for them. Yes, and you know it. Right, and you know, it's like one farmer said to me, uh, you know, I used to meet her in town and get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and all of a sudden, after 3 years, she goes, "John, do you realize how big your checks are now?"
And I'll put mine in as well if anyone
I do. And she goes, "They're really
would like
big,
to reach
and I
out to
really
me
like it. I really
and
like
has
it."
any
So,
ideas they want to bounce off me or needs help.
I didn't put
moving
my
forward.
email address in
I
here,
hate
which
to make
is
that plug, but,
johnwlash@gmail.com.
I really
If
just
anybody
want to
has
help
any
grow our
questions,
food
I
system in
encourage
Iowa
you to write me.
and
I
really
had
make
it
a lot
in
easier and more approachable
when I
for
originally
farmers
did the
to
test, and
not
then
be
there it
afraid
is.
to
Yes.
grow a large amount of food and scale up and feed a lot of people. So.
I want to thank our speakers tonight so much for doing this. John, Ellen, excellent work. Great topic. And also thank you to our funders. And you can see them there on the right side of your screen. Ag Ventures Alliance, Grain Millers, John Deere, 226 individuals gave $86,000 to our Beginning Farmer campaign this year. Farm Credit Services of America, the Ceres Foundation, and Cedar Tree Foundation. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. John, thank you. Hopefully we'll see you again on another Farminar.
And maybe you can come to our.
Oh, I'd love it. I really would. Yeah, it's
in January.
Fun. I guess hopefully it rubs off. I mean, yes.
Bravo.
Also, I need to join Practical Farmers of Iowa. I'll do that tomorrow.
Right.
There's an annual conference.
That'll be great. Okay. When is it?
January 24th and 25th.
I'd like to try to do that, actually. That's when nothing is going on in Iowa, though, right? I mean, I guess. I mean, but yeah, no, right. Okay, I got it. Okay. This has been fun. What about the headset, Luke? Do you want it back?
Yeah, you can just mail it back to me if you want. And
I may have the box right here somewhere. Yeah. Why don't you email the shipping address, and I'll get it off to you tomorrow or the next day. It looks like sort of a fancy thing, so.
Sure, absolutely.
Sure. Great. Yep, I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, and thank everyone who asked questions and